This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. All right, Emerald, if there was a profile on you by the media, we have to go and have lunch and they have a chat about who you are and your whole vibe. Where are you going? What are you waiting? Because I did this once with The Age and I was like, fuck, I need to go to a cool, progressive, like vegetarian place.
Yeah. I hate that my answer would have been, it would probably be ramen because that's so predictable,
Basic
isn't
bitch.
it? And it's a little bit passe. I feel like ramen, like let's get ramen together. That's had its moment. But Taro's ramen is, it is the goat.
I guess, like, I went to Ceres in Melbourne, which, like, you want to, I don't know, give some level of shout out to a cool small business or something. Anyway, Hannah Ferguson has done one of these in the Sydney Morning Herald. Hannah
Where did she
Ferguson
go?
of Cheek Media. Where the fuck? AP Bread and Wine.
Okay, that tracks. I don't know what it is, but it sounds fancy.
She had leftover bread pasta. I mean, the meal looks delicious. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Hannah Ferguson is on Cheek Media, which I reckon a lot of people from our audience would be familiar with Hannah Ferguson anyway.
Yeah.
And she's gone solo. She's big influencer, although she doesn't like that term. She also doesn't like being called a journalist. But she did do this speech at the National Press Club sort of after the election talking about announcing the fact that she does plan to run as an independent senator in New South Wales.
Well, she'd already announced that, right?
At the press club?
The
press club?
Yeah.
Yes. I thought she announced that at the press club. Yes. So now she's giving like further details. She's sitting down. Cheek Media is sort of doing very well. She's got very big reach and she's sort of, getting a lot of attention. And just to mention, and this came out this week, just some interesting comments, I guess, that I was keen to pick your brains about. While remaining realistic about the unlikely odds of being elected, Ferguson is dogged in her conviction, telling me she's prepared to try and fail 100 times. And Ferguson's not in the business of being coy about the extent of her ambition, revealing that her ultimate goal is to create a new political party that fills an ideological gap she sees on the left between Labor and the Greens. Do you feel like there's a gap in there?
I mean, there's a big gap. There is a big gap. That's true. I'm surprised by this though, because you fully I would have got independent vibes from her. So I thought it was interesting for her to be saying that she wants to start a new political party. But I think I do get confused about, or I would be critical of, I guess the kind of theory of change or maybe lack thereof that she's laying out here. Like she's saying, she said in this article, quote, "We are so used to the two-party system that asking Labor to do anything feels like begging for a crumb." She mentions climate action, gender inequality, cost of living, while the Greens, quote, "baggage and branding has allowed it to be framed as radical and obstructionist." I want to come back to that. She says, "What I would be looking to do is to create a kind of framework for how we can make policy with respect, not designed to inflame, and focus on issues that matter to middle Australians." She cites David Pocock as the kind of politician she would aspire to be. So
just a reminder, the title of this piece is Hannah Ferguson wants Rupert Murdoch to know her and hate her. Okay. And this is what she's been out there. Like, I want Rupert Murdoch to know me and hate me, but I'm not here to inflame and I will never be painted as a radical. Come on, man.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a disappointing framing because it feels really cliche and it feels like, it feels scripted and it feels disingenuous when you say, we want to make policy that doesn't inflame, that focuses on issues that matter to middle Australians. But because it just comes back to, it's like, who are you talking about? When you say middle Australians, you have to pick, so you're going to piss someone off because if you genuinely want to, if middle Australia is the vast majority of Australians,
yes,
then you're going to piss certain people off, you're going to inflame, and you are going to inflame the same people that the Greens are inflaming, right?
Absolutely.
And that are accusing the Greens of being, quote, radical and obstructionist. So I think it's either naive or cynical. And I don't get the impression that she is stupid in any way. And so then I wonder, is this purely, if it's a political framing exercise to be to kind of tap into that thing that Australians have of wanting, or everyone has of wanting to, not everyone, a lot of people have of wanting to be seen as centrist, sure. But then it's disappointing all the same because it's like, really? You're already already falling into this, like, the same trap that every other politician does, and that's what leads them down the path where you end up begging them for a crumb.
Yeah. I mean, the Teals do sometimes get painted as a radical and obstructionist when they ever have a deciding vote. Of course, they are already painted like that from the right-wing media and the coalition. But also, they get a better run in the media because they're far less effective. They have less serious power to actually seriously change things and to actually push for a progressive changing of the political status quo. That's why they get the sweetheart deal. So if you really want to change stuff, people are going to paint you as radical and obstructionist, blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's heaps of stuff that we agree with Hannah Ferguson on. And I'm just like, if you're going to get into this fight, be prepared for this. Because the gap between Labor and the Greens, you think, can be successfully filled with a new major party? Come on.
Well, and I would want you to specify where in that gap, because as I said, my thing to me is that there is a big gap. But are you saying just slightly to the left of Labor on certain issues, or are you saying just slightly to the right of the Greens? Because there's a big difference between those two things.
Right.
I think the Greens do have baggage. They do have a branding issue, absolutely. But I guess this is the thing where it's like, I reckon what has happened is Hannah Ferguson, through incredible hard work and success, has been allowed a certain level of access to institutions of power. Right. And you get, and I think you've seen this happen with a few people, when people have a little bit of access, they're meeting with ministers and people who appear to be taking them seriously. And that lends itself to this idea that why is nothing getting done? It's like people must just not be focusing on making good policy. And
with
we really just need
respectful
a process
policy.
to make good policy with respect.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not the fucking problem. The problem is not making good policy because, obviously, the reason I do this podcast, but I think you would probably agree, Hannah, the Greens make good policy. They have very, years and years worth of structures that have been put in place in order to make good policy. The problem is, once you get close to making good policy that actually becomes reality, that is legislated and implemented in this country, large institutions will suddenly no longer be your friend, will accuse you of being radical and obstructionist, and will do everything in their power to shut you down. So I think that little window into power and influence makes you think that maybe it's that I just need to be a party that does this.
We'll be a good party with the good policies. I would love to know the policies that reduce inequality, fix the housing crisis, and address climate, take on the fossil fuel lobby that don't inflame. I would love to see those policies.
And it's not just about but not just make. I believe you can make a party that makes those policies. You could do that in, a matter of months. You just need to get your sign-ups and register yourself and say, these are our policies now.
Yes.
Are you going to win? Are you going to win and make those policies happen? Please.
And how yes, just join the Greens, Hannah. Come on to the Greens,
Yeah, I would love to know what compromises you think of the Greens, but she has valid critiques of the Greens, but is not laying out yet, from what I can see here, and maybe she's keeping it cards close to her chest, which might be wise, but a strategy, a theory of change to do what the Greens haven't been able to do, which is win government and implement the good policies.
Yeah. And as per our friends at Lamestream Pod with Osman Faruqi and Scott Mitchell, they were discussing this briefly, and Oz pointed out that, well, if she's running in New South Wales at the next federal election in the Senate, she'll be, the biggest threat is to eat into David Shoebridge's vote, most likely. At least the Greens could potentially, be losing votes there. Now, again, anyone can run anyone, it's all fair democracy. That's all fine. But, is that a good strategy for Hannah Ferguson to get Australia to the closer progressive vision that she wants? And I don't know, should we be worried? Do we think Hannah Ferguson would be a serious threat to that vote?
A good question. Remains to be seen because, like I said, I don't know what her campaign strategy is. If she has a campaign strategy that can bring enough people on board to, win, I would kind of be more open to it, but then it depends on how you act, how you then wield that power in Parliament as well. There's a lot of unknowns there.
Well, she had a nice lunch. That's the main thing.
Talk about the Greens, that bunch of idiots.
If you want the dole for life, free marijuana, vote Greens.
And I'm not suggesting the Greens are terrorists. I'm suggesting they hate our society.
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
It's Serious Danger. It's a podcast about green politics in Australia. It's not an official Greens Party podcast. It's a Hannah Ferguson podcast. If she wins, we'll...
Officially endorsed.
we'll join her. It's produced by Michael the Griffin. I'm Tom Ballard, coming to you from Naarm on Wurundjeri and Bunurong country. Hello, Emerald Moon.
Hello. I'm in Manjin, Yagara and Turrbal country. This week, Australia is going to, well, not this week, but on the podcast, we're talking about the fact that Australia is going to recognise a Palestinian state, but remain complicit in the genocide. And ahead of next week's...
That's not the headline we want to focus on.
That's not the headline. No, that's right. Ahead of next week's productivity roundtable or economic roundtable, now it's got different names, but we're taking a look at the 4-day work week proposal and kind of what might be, how that might shake out alongside some of these other big proposals that have come out, particularly from the union movement. Controlled opposition, ? Before we get there, we have to thank our new Patreon subscribers. We have Christoph has signed up to support us on patreon.com/seriousdangerau. That is how you can chip in $3 a month and you get access to a bonus episode every couple of weeks. It's how we pay our producer, Mike the Griffin, and run the show. That is the only way it happens. So thank you so much for people who sign up there. The latest episode that we put out on the bonus feed, the Patreon feed, is reading Paddy Manning's Inside the Greens, part of Chapter 10, Milne Rebuilds, the Christine Milne era.
The Milne era. As always, we say if you can't support the show, that's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. But you can give us a 5-star review on podcasting apps. My boyfriend did one recently. I wonder if it's appeared. He doesn't listen to the show, but he did. He did.
We're farming fake reviews now.
That's basically how it's working, yeah. Ooh, one review. Great insight into the Greens. 5 stars, even though Emerald thinks the Patreons aren't attractive. I don't know what that's a reference to.
That?
Did you say they're all fugly?
I don't know. I think they're all hot and sexy, and I want that on the record.
5 stars.
5 stars.
Just finally.
It's about peace and security for both Israel and Palestine.
Just finally, Amal Nasser was on our show earlier from the Palestine Action Group. She says this is just about appeasing internal factions in the Labor Party. This is what she said on our show. Genocide. So you think it's domestic politics that's led Anthony Albanese to this, not something greater?
No, absolutely, it is domestic politics. There's massive uproar within his own party, but also on the ground. We saw over 300,000 people marching the Harbour Bridge calling an end to this genocide.
Your response, PM?
Oh, look, there are people on both sides of this debate who want conflict to continue, who want to think that it's like a football game between, South and the Broncos, and you got to back in your team and you got to back them in. What we need is a win-win. What we need is that the fact that this decision is criticised by people on all sides of the debate, I expected that to be the case. What this is about is a serious attempt to move forward. And I say this, that the people who are saying this is not the way forward need to put forward, okay, what's your plan?
Look, PM,
the plan of Prime Minister...
All right, it happened, everyone. On Monday, the government announced that Australia will move to formally recognise a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly next month, joining France, Canada and the UK in doing so. Our recognition is predicated on certain conditions. Those conditions include that there be no role for Hamas in the governing of a future Palestinian state. Apparently, we're going to guarantee that by stopping anyone from Hamas running in elections. That was what Anthony Albanese said. Can't imagine any problems with that whatsoever. And that all seems like in line with democracy and human rights and stuff.
Great. Super democratic.
Yeah. The Palestinian Authority is to be de-armed and demilitarized. It needs to recognize Israel's right to exist in peace and security. Once again, a reminder that no country has a right to exist under international law. It's not a thing. It's not actually a thing.
It's not a thing.
Not a thing.
Really not a thing.
Democratic reform of the Palestinian Authority, including the holding of elections.
Sure.
And in a press conference, Albanese told the media that a two-state solution is humanity's best hope to break the cycle of violence in the Middle East and to bring an end to the conflict, suffering and starvation in Gaza. Suffering that we are complicit in by selling weapons to the very country that is doing. We talked through a lot of that, like about the idea of Australia recognising a Palestinian state 2 weeks ago, episode 187, if people want to check that out. But now we have it. It was like, yeah, the big story of the week, hands down. Now that it's actually happened, how are you feeling about it? What should we make of it all, Emerald?
Underwhelmed. It's actually like I am torn because I think that, on the left in particular, we need to celebrate our wins and take stock of what we have achieved. But the way that this has been won, and even the way that it's reported and presented, is quite explicitly like this is directly related to the attempted genocide of the Palestinian people. The fact that states are now willing to recognize their statehood. And so it doesn't feel like much of a win, does it? And it doesn't feel like much of a win when, yes, we continue to supply weapons parts for Israel's continued genocide.
Well, a genocide that's not being recognised by these same people who are doing this. On a comment on one of our videos from last week, someone was like, hey, give them credit. They recognise they've called this a genocide. And I'm like, have they? I haven't seen any recognition from the Australian government. I don't think that's the official position, that they acknowledge the reality that is cited by leading human rights organisations and genocide and Holocaust scholars, that what we're seeing is a genocidal war. The G word is completely absent from any statement that I see from these folks.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Forgive me if I've missed it, but no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I guess I was surprised by the speed. 2 weeks ago when we were talking about it, the timeline was very much. I was like, hey, it's not a matter of if, but when. We're working on it. It's going to happen at some point. Give us some time. Chill out. Don't rush me. And then it did actually happen. I suppose they clearly want to get on board, and there is a level
now
of
that it's cool.
Yes. 147 countries did this before it was cool, by the way. And now Australia, Canada, and France are getting on board, so that's something. I mean, I think it's stupid to do this because Anthony Albanese told me that we're not a major player in the Middle East, so it doesn't matter what Australia does, you see. So it
doesn't matter. That's right. Yeah, I think
stupid.
so too. Mm.
Can we take a moment? Like, how is Fatima Payman feeling about this? Like, shout out to Fatima Payman, who, as we know, crossed the floor in the Senate, became a rat, transformed into a rat, according to Labor hacks, by daring
an Animorphs-style transformation.
Did you read those books? I loved Animorphs.
Fuck yeah, crazy. Yeah.
So good. Fucking Labor yaks trying to slither into my ear.
The book cover, yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Fatima did post a video. Have you seen this video from Fatima Payman?
No.
Guys, Australia has finally recognised the state of Palestine. 11 months since I crossed the floor, and my goodness, it feels so amazing to have joined every single person out there, every Australian out there who put pressure on the government and wanted them to do what's right by the Palestinian people, to be on the right side of history. And today's the day. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much to all the Labor Party members, unionists who have proudly pushed and pressured the Labor government to do better. And here we are. It's incredible.
She's stoked, man. She's very happy with the whole thing. She's very loud.
Yeah. Fuck, that actually hurt my ears. I had to immediately mute it and then come back in.
For people listening, she's got Anthony Albanese in the background, the actual press conference that she recorded it from. And yeah, she is delighted with this win. To her credit, she's sort of saying now we need sanctions on Israel and anti-arms trade. So she's taking the win and sort of saying we need to go further. But yes, I like the shout out to the Labor members there, the people that she was representing by adhering to the Labor Party platform when she crossed the floor to support a Greens motion to recognise the state of Palestine. 11 months ago, that was evil and divisive and terrible and anti-Semitic probably, and now the Australian government is doing it. What do you know? It's crazy.
Do you reckon she'll go back to Labor now?
I don't think they'll take her. Oh, I guess maybe they will.
Yeah, probably not.
They'll take the Greens. They'll take Dorinda Cox. They'll take anyone.
Yeah, that's true. They'll take a Green. Maybe they'll take her back.
So some reactions from the pro-Palestine movement on this decision. Palestine Action Group Sydney put out a statement on Facebook saying recognition is a distraction. Sanction Israel now. We must be clear. Recognition of a Palestinian state has never been a demand of this movement. How can we recognise a state that Israel is actively destroying? Well, I've seen a few people make this, whether they mean the broader pro-Palestine historical movement, or they're saying the movement right now, the people hitting the streets, 300,000 people on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, at least in terms of their official demands, they were not calling for recognition right now. They were calling for sanctions on Israel to stop the genocide.
Yeah.
How can we recognize a state that Israel is actively destroying? There is no Palestinian state to recognize. While Gaza is being obliterated and occupied, recognition is meaningless when, at the same time, our government continues to arm and trade with the very regime seeking its annihilation.
It's kind of a corollary of, like, it's the equivalent of Israel has a right to exist, right? Like, that's where the discussion sits. There's no concrete. It's just Israel has a right to exist, and now we're saying also so does Palestine.
Right.
That's the extent of our foreign policy on this.
Yes. I mean, yes. How meaningful is it to recognize the idea that Palestinian people should have a state without any further? So you can impose all sorts of conditions on it about like no military and no Hamas, yada, yada, yada. But you can't say things like where are the borders going to be? What's going to happen to illegal settlers in the West Bank? And like, all those are kind of open questions, but definitely no Hamas. And again, as I think I tried to make the point 2 weeks ago, think about someone who, lost 10 family members from Israeli strikes, looked at the devastation and horror around them, saw their family members being starved, and it's been like, fuck this. I'm joining Hamas because they're the only ones who are providing any kind of resistance to this illegal occupation and genocidal war. Is that person forever banned from ever standing for democratic election in a future Palestinian state?
Yeah.
And is that just and fair? Seriously?
Nope.
Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for the Occupied Territories, has warned the international debate's current focus on the question of Palestinian statehood should not distract the attention from where it should be, the genocide, which is probably fair enough. And again, that's the UN reporter for the Occupied Territories. So someone who certainly, has an interest in or thoughts on or a lot of thinking around the idea of statehood is sort of saying, guys, right now, focus on starving the occupation, the total takeover of Gaza that Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about, and the genocidal war, please.
Yeah.
As for the Greens, Foreign Affairs spokesperson David Shoebridge said Australia's decision was overdue and should have happened decades ago. What Australia has done today is take a tiny step away from a shrinking and discredited minority of states centered on the US and Israel to join the overwhelming majority of nations that already recognize Palestine. But Shoebridge said recognition won't feed starving kids or stop the bombs, and called on Australia to sanction Israel and stop exporting F-35 fighter jet parts to Israel. Now, I was wondering what you think, like, to your normie, your average citizen, maybe who isn't following the ins and outs of this fully, what would they make of that? Because you can imagine an argument of someone saying, well, this seems like a win. Recognizing a Palestinian statehood, according to the polls, is relatively popular amongst the Australian public. And you could see some people saying, oh, you're not happy about this? Like, nothing's ever good for the left. Just take the win, right? Like, what would you say to that position?
Well, that's kind of what I was, like, that occurred to me. But I actually don't know whether, in this instance, it holds much water. Because people, even the average person, as we know, is growing aware that civilians are being systematically starved in Gaza. And so I think when the response from the government is we recognize Palestine, I actually think it's quite a normal, the normal reaction to that would surely be, okay, what about the starvation?
Yeah.
Like, what about the bombs?
Yeah.
So I think it's more, I think that, again, the Greens' position here is more aligned with what an average person would think. Of course, it is worth noting that, like, you look at Anthony Albanese's comments on it, on any post by or about Albanese at the moment, and there are a lot of people in there going, like, accusing him of being an Islamist extremist and supporting Hamas and all of this. So there's also that.
Well, and he explicitly said, I think, in an interview, the fact that this is getting criticized from all sides, I expected that. But
that old chestnut. Everyone
some
hates
people are
me,
anti-genocide,
therefore I'm right.
some people are pro-genocide. We're taking the sensible centrist
Sensible
position.
centre. Yeah, great.
But, I'm constantly told that Australians, they're pragmatic. Yeah, they don't like symbolism and they like to have, to make stuff done. And so if that is true, then I guess you'd sort of say, okay, recognition seems fine. But yeah, what about those like weapons that we keep sending? Which to me is like this week has been, again, a kind of breakthrough watershed. Again, way too late, way too overdue, complete abrogation of the duty from the Australian media in terms of seriously pursuing this story and interrogating the government's claims that we don't play any role in supporting Israel militarily. But it is sort of all falling apart. And the truth
it is
emerging.
wild. Again, it is wild that for years now, or at least the last year or so, like the Greens have been like, hey, you guys shouldn't export weapons to Israel. And like the government, and I would say even like the media for a long time would often just regurgitate and be like,
we're not.
Government denies supplying. Yeah, we're not.
That's not doing it.
And it's like, and now they're like, oh, yeah, no, they were. They were.
The media was serious. Like, the Greens say we are exporting weapons. The government says we're not. What a crazy time.
Who's to say? Who's to say? Yeah.
Did you see Richard Marles on Insiders last weekend?
Yeah.
Sort of saying we're an F-35, we're an F-35 country. Saying we don't export
because
weapons.
Finally,
we are an F-35 country.
Because you have a journalist actually going, well, but the parts, we export parts for F-35 bombers.
Yep.
And he kind of stutters and stumbles and goes, well, we're an F-35 country.
Of course. Everyone knows that.
How I identify. Yeah. Oh, yeah, those. Oh, those.
In your
yes,
citizenship.
those weapon parts. Oh, my God, why didn't you say? Yeah, love those. That's us.
When you become a citizen in this country and you're going to do that pledge or whatever, you need to say, I swear allegiance to Australia and the F-35 program.
Exactly. Yeah. Vegemite, gum trees, koalas, and F-35s.
On Thursday, the ABC dropped this story. Dozens of Australian military export contracts cleared for Israel during Gaza war. The federal government has upheld dozens of military export permits to Israel, raising fresh questions about Australia's weapons transfers throughout the war in Gaza. Questions like, what the fuck? Australia continues to deny that it supplies weapons and ammunition to Israel, saying that has been the case for at least the past 5 years. Defence Minister Richard Marles has recently doubled down on denials, adding that any claims of weapon exports are misinformation. They hate that misinformation. Fact check.
Fact check. Nope, we disagree.
But in responding to a parliamentary question on notice, the Defence Department has acknowledged that after a review, it decided to uphold 35 defence export permits granted prior to October the 7th, 2023. So they upheld them, that is.
Yeah.
And after previously stating that the permits were related to dual-use items, that's like, there's civil and commercial uses, the new information also revealed that most are listed as specifically for military purposes.
Right.
So the article goes on. In June 2024, there was a review. They found there were 66 active arms export permits that were approved before October the 7th. We now know that 44 of those permits are on the munitions list, which means they are designed or adapted for use by armed forces, or they are inherently lethal.
Inherently lethal.
Inherently lethal.
Penny? Do you hear that, Penny?
No, Penny Wong told us that F-35 components and parts are non-lethal in nature, while Mr. Marles described the involvement in the fighter jet supply chain as being a very different question to the issue of being an arms exporter. I like this. Senator Shoebridge described the government's comments as excruciating.
Truly.
It hurts me. Trying to watch them defend this. International law is crystal clear. Parts of weapons are weapons, he said. I want to be very clear. When the Albanese government says to the Australian public, Australia doesn't export weapons to Israel, this is them actively misleading the public. I will go further, David Shoebridge. They are lying to the public. This is an active and deliberate and conscious lie, and they should be dragged over hot coals for it and held to account from our media, many of whom seem unwilling to do that because, of course, they've backed in these claims, downplayed and distracted from Israel's genocide for the past 2 years.
Yes, indeed.
Is this vindication for the Greens? Like, do you think this is going to change much in terms of like how people think about this, or be like, hey, the Greens were telling us the truth the whole time?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, it is I think having your government exposed as so blatantly just fucking lying, that's got to do something to people's trust in government at least.
Yes, certainly on this question. Some other reactions to the recognition. You'll never believe it. Israel, not a fan. They're not into it.
No. Oh, they've opposed. Interesting. Okay.
Benjamin Netanyahu said to have European countries and Australia march into that rabbit hole is disappointing, and I think it's shameful. He means the rabbit hole that of recognising Palestine doing anything. Like, he thinks we've been tricked by those evil terrorists in Hamas. That's his position.
Yes.
Just a side note, this week, Israeli far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said plans to build more than 3,000 homes in a controversial settlement project in the occupied West Bank will bury the idea of a Palestinian state. Okay, so that's
cool. And so that guy, will he be allowed to run for elections in future or banned, for democratic and safety
that would be
reasons and
democracy.
security?
They're allowed to have democracy, you see, so... Yeah, there's a role for him in a future Israeli state. That's no worries. And the Benjamin Netanyahu war cabinet that has overseen a genocide, they can run for election again, and they can continue to have a military because we know we can trust them with it. So,
okay.
How much finance ministering is this guy doing? That's my question.
I know. Oh God.
Are you also looking at the spreadsheets, man, or mainly focused on building a legal settlement?
Mainly focused on the genociding. Yeah.
Israel's ambassador to Australia, Amir Maimon, said by recognising a Palestinian state now, Australia elevates the position of Hamas, a group it acknowledges as a terrorist organisation. And this is the line, right? We're hearing this line being echoed by the coalition. They condemn the move. They've described it as a propaganda victory for Hamas. By recognising a Palestinian state now, we are rewarding terrorism.
Much of the media uproar this week is around the idea that Hamas is so stoked about this and have been, quote, praising Anthony Albanese. But isn't that, I can see you've got here, isn't that kind of bullshit anyway? It's a bit sus.
This is definitely dodgy reporting, yes. We got a story from about midweek from Matt Knott in the Sydney Morning Herald. Headline, Albanese faces backlash after Hamas praises PM's courage on Palestinian recognition. Prime Minister Albanese has been accused of emboldening Hamas after the listed terror group applauded Australia's decision to recognise Palestine, arguing the move had vindicated its October the 7th attacks on Israel and commitment to violent resistance. Hassan Youssef, a co-founder of Hamas, says, "We welcome Australia's decision to recognise the state of Palestine and consider it an important step towards achieving justice for our people and securing their legitimate rights." Now, this went gangbusters. Everyone was like, oh my God, yeah, Hamas is stoked, as you said. This is wild. This is an endorsement. See, if terrorists are celebrating your decision, then it's a terrible decision to make. Yeah. Then a few people said, hang on. Wait a minute. Hang on. The SMH just got a statement from a guy from Hamas. How does that kind of work?
Yeah.
Turns out, and again, I'm relying on the good people at Lamestream, Scott Mitchell and Osman Faruqi. Check out their stuff. They do good work. The guy has been in prison, in Israeli detention, since October 2023. Okay. This has been confirmed by his son, who is an Israeli spy, by the way.
Right.
Now,
right.
I want that TV show, please. That's fucking insane.
Yes.
I'm a co-founder of Hamas, and my son is spying for Israel. And he's got to move back in because we've got to live together. Would love to know what's going on there. Anyway, Lamestream asked Matthew Knott and the Sydney Morning Herald questions about this, and they issued an update. The story has been updated to clarify the statement was issued by Sheikh Hassan Youssef's office and that he is held in prison. A subsequent statement issued by a Telegram channel is Hamas's name has also been added to the story. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So look,
in Hamas's name.
Yes, this has all been picked up and celebrated because, yes, people who hate this decision, people who are pro-Israel, it fits into their narrative and their agenda very neatly. Albanese says, no, Hamas won't like this decision because they only want one state. They hate the two-state sort of situation. But I think, you could even if Hamas, aren't particularly invested in the two-state idea. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know all the ins and outs, all the history, or the policy positions in that respect. You can understand why people as part of Hamas may just view it as a positive move that more and more countries are recognizing Palestinian statehood, which pisses off Israel significantly. Like you can understand that. And we shouldn't dictate our own foreign policy or the moral validity or the policy correctness of this position based on the reaction of some people. Because it also, to me, exposes or highlights a terrible thing within the pro-Israel mindset, which is, Hamas are evil through and through. They're born evil. They are fundamentally evil in every single way. Anything that they think is good must be evil. And there is no way that Hamas's goals can align with any kind of, calls for justice or resistance to an unjust occupation and dispossession of the Palestinian people. You know what I mean?
Because Hamas cannot be made up of people. Like,
no.
It has to just be a completely, mythologized, like, mass without any kind of humanity attached to it, any kind of complexity.
Yeah.
Because that really undermines the entire project of the Israeli state.
Yes. Or any relationship to the material conditions under which Palestinian people live.
Yes.
Now, again, none of this, I hate to do you condemn Hamas stuff, but, Hamas committed war crimes on October the 7th. Taking hostages is a war crime. Killing civilians is a war crime. Those people should be held to account. But none of that distracts from the broader cause of whether it's Hamas, whether it's their predecessors, whether it's the organizations that will come after them if the occupation continues, right? Like that is just what will happen. People will resist under those conditions.
Yeah.
Hamas is a manifestation of that. But of course, that story, that recognition of that reality completely goes against the Zionist project, the Israeli government's project.
Yeah, that they're just
and the
pure
US
evil inhuman dogs.
Right.
Like, evil for the sake of it, Yeah.
I'd really recommend people check out that Lamestream media story and, again, support their work. They're doing fantastic stuff exposing this. I guess we'll see what happens in September with the UN General Assembly. But as we'll mention at the end of the show, honestly, don't worry about that. Just march for Palestine. Do everything you can to call on our government to impose sanctions on the Israel government because they're doing a genocide right now. And recognition, whatever you think about it, the two-state solution, whatever you think about it, is a matter for another time. The pressing issue facing all of us is the crime against humanity that is playing out before us every single day.
Will you come out tonight? Everyone's trying to get it right. Get it right. Everybody's working for the weekend. Everybody wants a new romance.
All right, I actually have a good segue for this, I've realised, where I can talk about Anthony Albanese eating a strawberry sundae at the Ekka.
Okay, please.
Because, well, first of all, did you see this? Did you see him eating the sundae? Do you know about the sundaes?
I don't know about
Do you
the
know
sundae.
that this is a thing? Okay, all right, context. The Ekka, the agricultural show in Brisbane, because it's the Brisbane exhibition, I guess, and that's called Ekka. We get a Wednesday. We all get a Wednesday off every year in August in Brisbane, so that we can all go to the show, should we so wish. We get the Ekka winds. It wasn't too windy this week, but it's usually you get the Ekka winds coming in. And we also have strawberry season, and so at the Ekka you get like a strawberry sundae thing that's got it's like a strawberry ice cream. It's got a strawberry on top of it, and that's a classic Ekka sundae with an E, not a Y. So Prime Minister Anthony Albanese this week, he came up to Brisbane for the Ekka on the Wednesday, the public holiday, and he tries the sundae. And I just want, the exchange that he had with the journalist was just so off-putting, and I know that it's partly because I hate the guy, obviously. Maybe this may be breaking news, but I'm not a fan of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Yep.
But he says the journalist asks him how it is while he's just taking a bite, and he's like,
"It's very hard to talk at this point in time. You waited until I ate the strawberry before you asked the question."
And it's that kind of vibe of when your uncle gets defensive and kind of weirdly nasty at a family function, and it's it's they're acting like they're doing banter and they're joking, but you're this doesn't feel like a joke. It feels like you're mad. Because he then says to the journalist,
"Put it in your gob now."
I am. Yep. Yep, those are the words. And gets her to take a bite of the ice cream, and then he's like, "And how is it? See, you did that to me first."
I had to for the interview. Go on. There you go. Now, how are the strawberry sundaes?
Oh, he's done it to me too. No, you got me there, dear.
Have a great day.
And just poor journalist is just, like laughing along. But I was like, wow, this guy's really, what an unlikable man. Anyway, point of the story is Brisbane residents this week had a 4-day work week. Ding, 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 ding. We got there.
That is a good thing. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, thank you. And a 4-day work week is something that will potentially be discussed at next week's Economic Reform Roundtable, the Productivity Roundtable that the Australian government is convening. The ACTU, Australian Council of Trade Unions, this week said they're going to bring forth a proposal for a 4-day work week. Is it finally happening? We've talked about 4-day work week. Actually, I went back and looked. It was episode 5 of this show.
Nice.
Back in 2021 with Scott Ludlam, I think. And we were like, 4-day work week, it's great. We should do it. And we specifically said, we were like, do you reckon the unions will ever fight for something like this?
Awesome.
And now they are.
That's good news.
It's good news.
Whether it's going to happen, I guess we could just check the minutes of the roundtable that have already been released in terms of the outcomes of what will it be approved. And if it's not on there, then I guess it's not kind of happening.
Wow.
So that's my position. I would love it to happen. I'm happy to see the union movement get on board the 4-day work week and popularize that idea. I was, of course, depressed to see it almost immediately dismissed across the board. But hey, that's the Albanese Labor government.
Yeah.
The party of workers. When the peak union body comes up with an idea, the government will say, fuck you. We mean productivity changes and increasing the GST.
Yeah. I reckon we have different interpretations of this because like Labor, the ACT put this forth. Apparently the AMWU and the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation have also called for a shorter working week ahead of the roundtable. This week, the response from both Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, and Anthony Albanese, PM, was pretty, it was dismissive, but it was in terms of language like that they have, quote, no plans to adopt the idea, or it's not something that they're working on, and that their priorities in terms of industrial relations or workers' rights have been elsewhere.
Right.
The Prime Minister, again, said that the union was entitled to put forward whatever ideas it would like. Now, I look at that and I'm like, that is deliberately nebulous and I reckon leaves them room to adopt it. And maybe I'm being naively hopeful, but I feel as though that's the kind of thing that I've heard governments say before they do something.
Interesting. Hey, I'd love to be wrong. Would love to be wrong. I just think an alternative argument is they can't say, no, we're definitely not doing that, because that also defeats the idea that, everyone is bringing ideas to the round table and they are open to the ideas that everyone brings, from the left and from the right. Okay. I would love to be wrong and would love to sign up to your view of that response. But to me, that just says, yeah, sure, these fucking unions can say whatever the hell they like. That's far too radical. Business hates it. The Chamber of Commerce hates it. We're not going to do that. And again, even though you and I know this is not the case, the presentation of it is we're trying to increase productivity here, and you want to give people a shorter work week?
Well,
what the hell?
But do you think you're kind of basing that on the fact that Albanese was sort of like, oh, well, I'd love a shorter working week, wouldn't we all? Blah blah blah. But do you think that has Labor said anything that kind of places a 4-day working week or a shorter working week in opposition with productivity? Or is that just the business lobby?
No, I'm basing this on my sense that the Chalmers Albanese worldview allows for some concessions for workers' rights, but is not prepared to depart from the line of capital and business organizations that far. That's my view. Nor do they have the courage, and they would argue they didn't run on anything like this. So to me, it is an idea that is far too outside the scope of what they consider to be sensible, reasonable policy. That's my view.
Yeah, okay. Because they've said, yes, they've said they're not ruling anything in or out, but they've also been I think Jim Chalmers has kind of taken that line, and then Albanese has more saying, we're not going to do any tax reforms. The only tax policy we're implementing is the one that we took to the election, while Chalmers was initially saying we're not going to make any sensible progress on productivity, resilience, or budget sustainability without proper consideration of more tax reform. What do you make of that? Like, is there a conflict between those two, or is that just they've changed their positioning between the first and the second statement?
Yeah, I saw a bit of coverage of this, and yes, they do seem fundamentally contradictory. And you'd think they'd sort that sort of stuff out before they go
Behind
and
the
have a chat to the
scenes.
media about what the fuck they're trying to do here. I don't know. Maybe they think it doesn't matter what we say to the media because, again, we have prepared everything that this roundtable is going to come up with. We have literally written the outcomes. It's sorted, mate. It's all
Yeah.
theatre. So maybe they're not too worried about what the messaging is.
So you're talking about the fact that this week it was like leaked that there are kind of predetermined outcomes of the roundtable. Is that right?
Yes. There was a leak of a document detailing possible outcomes for the summit.
Yeah.
Okay, and people would argue it was a paper prepared by the Treasury Department, detailed the government's focus on issues such as housing approvals and cutting red tape, talking about changes to the National Construction Code, and basically the opposition is saying, see, it's all theatre, it's all a stitch up, that they're not actually listening to people's ideas. That's the view. So as Mike the Griffin points out, like, yeah, what's the thinking behind leaking? That leak does seem a bit of an odd choice. Would that be from someone who wants to open up the discussion at the round table before it happens, or someone who's trying to sabotage the whole thing?
Or trying to sabotage. Yeah, I don't know. It could be, seems more sabotagey, doesn't it? Like, I think my take on what is the point of the round table is that, yeah, like it probably is stitched up, and I doubt that the government is going to do things like 4-day work week or whatever as like that's going to come out of the round table. But I also think that there is potentially that the round table serves a function beyond just what comes out of it, specifically that it is an opportunity to float ideas that might be adopted or implemented at a later date. So when I say like, oh, I don't necessarily like see Labor's position as ruling out a 4-day work week, for example, I don't mean I like my belief in them adopting that at the round table, very low. I think the chances of that are very low.
Right.
But whether they'll then do it in a year or two or whatever, like they'll then announce, now we're doing this. That's what I think is a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of discussion around the idea of a 4-day work week has been triggered by all these sort of toing and froing from various groups?
Well, like I said, we talked about this back in 2021 because the Greens have been talking about a 4-day work week for some time. The Greens, they brought a policy to the last federal election on it. They've come out and said, great, about time, let's do it. We support what you're saying, ACTU. And in fact, this should be at the top of the agenda at the roundtable next week, which I thought was interesting because the ACTU also was in the news in the last couple of weeks for saying that reforms to tax breaks for property investors like negative gearing and capital gains tax discount should be on the agenda. And this is a kind of deliberate, like the Greens are basically saying this is a higher priority. A 4-day working week should be top of the agenda above negative gearing and CGT reform. Did you think that was interesting?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, if the name of the game is productivity, I guess, 4-day work week is definitely the sweet progressive answer to that, because it will make people happier, and as the trials have shown, does make people either has a positive or neutral effect on productivity rates. Again, business don't believe that. They hate that. I think it gives people more control. It'd be more of a hassle for them to introduce it. But yes, from the left's point of view, if you're talking about productivity, this is why the productivity debate is so crazy, because it's like everyone agrees we need to increase productivity. But of course, there are a million different ways to say that, to do that. There are evil ways to do that, which is like to deregulate the labor market, smash unions.
Yeah.
And there are cool ways to do that, give us a 4-day work week, please. So whenever anyone says we need to really figure out this productivity question, guess what? Cue class politics.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you bring class politics into it, but I've been thinking about this a fair bit, and I think a 4-day work week is the perfect issue for the Greens to be kind of pushing on right now. And I haven't always thought that, but I think if you think about building a broad coalition of people for a leftist electoral project in particular, and that's what the Greens are, what they need to do. A 4-day working week has something genuinely to offer for a huge range of people in a way that, for example, the Greens' housing policy didn't. And I think we've had some discussion. There's been commentary around how rent caps or phasing out negative gearing do piss off a broader section of Australian voters that the Greens kind of need to win and carve a potential voting base down the middle bit a little bit, because of the way that like wealth and the economy is structured in Australia, where housing wealth is sold as, and we've discussed this, like that's a major way to build wealth, is to amass property, is to like have an investment property or whatever that's sold to middle Australia as part of the dream. Whereas increasingly wages, income are not how you build wealth in this country. And it's like a 4-day working week for people who are relatively comfortable, people more in white collar jobs, people who are working 5 days a week in an office, and they're just fucking stressed and they want more time with their kids, with their friends, doing the things that they love. They want a 4-day working week. There's also people who are really fucking struggling and don't have enough hours and would benefit from a better distribution of hours. Like there is something genuinely to offer so many different groups of people with a 4-day working week. And in contrast with like when I know I'm rambling a bit, but it's like you talk about building a broad coalition of support as an electoral project. When the major parties say they want to do that, they mean tricking poor people into voting for policies that are built by and for the rich. But for a genuinely leftist electoral project, it means something that actually offers something across multiple, classes or kind of experiences in the current economy. So that's why I'm like, a 4-day work week, maybe it does make sense for the Greens to say put it top of the agenda. Maybe it's time.
I mean, yes, also in crude political terms, imagine if you were the government that got millions of people a 3-day weekend. Imagine that. Imagine what that would do for the recognition of what the union movement is about and what a Labor government is about, or what the left is broadly about. And all the people losing their minds about it, tearing their hair out, going, no, people don't work enough. You don't deserve a 3-day weekend. Like, pretty massive win. And just a reminder, it was the union movement that got the weekend in the first place. And when they did that, the businesses and the bosses lost their fucking mind. Yes.
Yeah.
No, it has to be a 6-day work week. Of course, that just makes sense. And of course, exactly the same arguments now. No, of course we have to work 5 days a week. Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. And as you were kind of talking about, the responses to this, the Business Council of Australia, the chief executive, whose name is Mr. Black. I love that.
Mr. Black.
He's out there saying like, unions, their approach to every economic issue is to prescribe and direct and to forcefully shove square pegs into round holes.
Yes.
It's the opposite of what every modern economy needs to be successful. We need flexibility.
We
He's
the bosses. We don't direct anyone. We don't force anyone to do anything. We're just the bosses, man. We're really easy going.
That's right. Forcing and directing and bossing, that's our job, and the unions should fucking stay out of it. I think there's this like the response from the Restaurant Cafe Association, for example. They're like, this is going to fuck over. If you have a blanket 4-day working week rule, how is that going to work for hospitality businesses that are already struggling? But the fact is, like, no one's calling for a blanket 4-day week rule. The ACTU itself is saying there would be sector-specific models. It could mean reducing working hours. It could mean adding more rostered days off. It could mean increasing annual leave. It could be redesigning rosters so that there's increased security and predictability.
Sounds like flexibility to me. That's weird.
Sounds like flexibility, exactly. But like, the business groups are just like freaking the fuck out.
Yes.
And they are saying...
You know what that is? That's pro-worker flexibility, which is a very different thing. That's not what the business bosses want. That's flexibility in the interest of people who are working.
Yeah. No, and there is, as you say, they're kind of placing a 4-day work week in opposition to the idea of increased productivity, which is just not borne out in any way by the evidence. The Australian Chamber of Commerce, their angle is like, this is putting the cart before the horse. because they're talking about dividing up the kind of a level of increased productivity among workers and bosses before we've even got the productivity. We need ideas to get us more productivity. Just a reminder, like, as the Australian Institute's Centre for Future Work, they did a report on productivity, just came out, points out that since 2000, productivity grew 4 times faster than average wages adjusted for consumer prices.
Wow.
It grew almost twice as fast as average wages adjusted for producer prices. So, like, productivity is up, wages are not. This is already happening. And the ACT are kind of framing this. They're talking about, well, we now have a massive explosion of AI, technological advances that are necessarily, kind of turbocharging existing productivity growth. So you need to put the processes and the structures in place now to share that. But the bosses, it's just not enough. No, I don't want to talk about sharing that productivity at all, actually. That's what you really mean. You don't mean we'll get the productivity first and then we'll talk about sharing it. You just mean I don't want to talk about sharing it at all.
No. And again, another evil version of productivity. Yes, automate everything. Get rid of as many human people as possible, because humans have this annoying tendency to want wages and conditions to improve. So if we could just have a self-checkout at the supermarket, that's going to be a lot more productive for everyone involved, and that's going to boost our profits, please. Nom, 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 nom.
But also, if you're worried about productivity, give your workers a 4-day work week. Like, that's where I'm like, I just don't even understand, because study after study after study shows that productivity increases when you reduce working hours in this way. Like, there's this recent study in Nature Human Behavior, thousands of employees, 141 organizations, countries around the world. They found that a 4-day work week not only reduces burnout, improves employee health and retention, but it boosts performance. We had the Australian study in 2023, 10 Australian companies, they trialed a 4-day work week. Productivity was higher at 70% of the firms, and in the 30% where it wasn't higher, it was the same.
The same. Great. Wonderful. Seems like pretty conclusive to me.
Absolutely.
But no, can't have it. Now, am I right in thinking that sometimes that look like, you might increase your hours in the 4 days, like the 4 days might be slightly longer, right? But it just means that you have one full day off, but you might increase your working hours slightly on those 4 other days. Is that sort of sometimes
so
the
that's
model?
how because like a lot of companies are already doing this, and increasingly more and more businesses are doing this in Australia.
Mixed in with the whole working from home conversation as well, and coming into the office, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the compressed hours working, like 4-day working week, is one model that I'm kind of like, I'm skeptical of, and I fear that this will end up being the broadly accepted model that businesses go, great, well, same hours, that's good for me, and they don't actually have to kind of pay a notionally higher wage to their employees,
right?
Because you're still working the same number of hours. I do think, if I had to choose between 40 hours over 5 days or 40 hours over 4 days, I'd probably choose 40 hours over 4 days, because I've worked 4 days for however many years, and like, I cannot fucking fathom working 5 days again. I think it's inhumane that anyone has to work 5. Truly, like, a 2-day weekend is not enough. I stand by it. I'm firmly pro 4-day week. But the idea that
I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm a comedian. I work very hard. So.
Yes, that's right. Your employer hasn't offered you 4-day work week yet, Tom?
Not yet. Actually looking for more work at the moment, if anyone knows.
Yes.
Got a bit too much spare time, if I'm honest.
Yeah. A lot of people are. This is the funny thing, and this is why I kind of talk about, it's the fact that it offers something for everyone, and it needs to be presented in that way as a distribution of work, as well as like a reduction of work for those who want it. Yeah. There are surveys that say that a lot of Australians are wanting to work fewer hours, but there are also many Australians who want to work more hours. But that's a matter of, it's like they really only want to work. It's not because they love working. They're like, I need fucking money. And so if wages were better, if housing was more affordable, if food wasn't so expensive, then perhaps that wouldn't be the case.
And everyone wants to be paid the same amount of money for less hours, for fewer hours. Everyone wants that, surely.
Yeah. Of course.
No one's saying, if I work fewer hours, I want to be paid less. Absolutely. If you're offered that deal, then people want to go with that one, please. Yes.
Yeah. It does just feel like it is the moment, I think, for a while there, when it was like cost of living, we're in a cost of living crisis. It was kind of post-pandemic and people's expectations were so low. I felt there was maybe a risk for an electoral project like the Greens to be talking about a 4-day work week because it feels kind of out of touch. Like when most people, or there's more people who want more hours than less. But I do think we're at a moment where, people, as we know from polling and surveys, like Australians are thinking, hey, maybe things are starting to get better. And it does feel like there's this dominant mood of people just being fucking exhausted. And people want more time to live a good life. And to present a bit of a hopeful, positive vision like that, we need a bit of that. We need something that, it offers something for so many people. It's hopeful. It is a different way of thinking about how we live our lives, not just constantly on the treadmill. And those are the discussions that we need to be having if we want to build any kind of movement, particularly on the left.
Particularly as every goddamn day, ordinary people who watch the news are seeing billionaires rule this fucking planet, right? The contrast, the stark contradictions in the wealth inequality, both in our society and globally. Like people see it. People see, they're working their fucking guts out to just barely get by and sort of meet their basic costs and meet the cost of living, while, insane plutocrats dominate the news and shape society to their will. And it's just like, really, we can't figure out a better balance than this, you guys. Now, I love your optimism, and you don't need to sell me on the idea of 4-day work week. I agree with you. Greens should totally run hard on it, and I also think it's great for the Greens to be, the relationship between the ACTU's policies on things being like exactly Greens policy, basically, on negative gearing, capital gains tax, and this 4-day work week. That's fantastic. I guess I've just been convinced that this Labor government is about better things aren't possible, and I'd be surprised if they were seriously trying to pump up expectations of this, because the ACTU has come out with policy positions before on lots of things that the Labor government has summarily dismissed, particularly on tax stuff, right? Like that's just happened a lot. So I'm not sure if this is going to be different, despite the fact the government is enjoying a thumping majority. Their political enemies are almost entirely spent, and now would be the perfect time to introduce some bold, popular reforms to make working people's lives better. But history tells me that's not going to happen.
Yeah, potentially not. I think about Queensland Labor adopting so many Greens policies in 2024. That sometimes I forget, I think Albanese is a very different leader to Stephen Miles, potentially. But I don't lose hope altogether. I don't lose hope. I mean, what do you think about, do you think that is it coordinated? Is it the ACTU, as Tim Wilson, opposition Shadow Minister Tim Wilson is saying that the ACTU and Labor coordinated this kind of policy drop thing where the ACTU puts out something crazy like a 4-day work week or negative gearing reform. Labor does something somewhere in the middle, and then they go, we rejected that and we rejected the businesses, so we're the sensible centre.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put any stock in Tim Wilson's knowledge of the intricate workings of the ACTU or the Labor Party. I think there are lots of examples of the ACTU, as I say, taking a firm position that contradicts Labor policy, that does in some way criticize Labor governments. Of course, when election time comes around, they fall into line. I think that's probably fair to say. But on lots of things, when it comes to taxing the rich, when it comes to some reforms, when it comes to Palestine even, the ACTU has departed from the official Labor government line. So no, I do not believe the idea that they coordinated this
You don't?
to allow the Labor government to appear reasonable. You do?
We're really, we've both got different kinds of cynicism here, because I don't think this is such a crazy thing to say. Like I sort of agree with him when he's doing this interview and he's like, do you really think that the ACTU and the Labor Party don't have discussions about strategy? Like the Labor Party being literally the political wing of the ACTU. That is fundamentally true. Like that is how, I wouldn't be surprised if, they do have discussions. Like there would absolutely have been conversations between ACTU members and Labor members, like decision makers, ahead of this announcement, where the ACTU is going, okay, we're going to drop this, and Labor's going, here's how it'll work for us.
Again, you are reaching the limits of my knowledge about how the ACTU works, how the ACTU produces things like this. I mean, I do know the ACTU. The ACTU is a more democratic organisation internally than the Labor Party. I think that's probably fair to say.
That's not hard.
Which is a very low bar. But I don't know. Maybe someone who knows more about the union movement can correct us and lay that out there. But
I think they would maybe just I reckon maybe more to say that I don't know that they would have put the proposal out there if Labor had said, no, that's going to be too damaging for us.
Interesting. But
I reckon Labor could have probably stopped it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
But it's true that I don't necessarily
Hang on, they let
Tim.
negative gearing reform go through that. Why would they approve that? Why would they sign off on that?
Because it's not the Greens saying it. It's not that damage, to have that out there. And actually, strategically, for it to then be floated by an organisation that's not the Greens, if Labor was looking at adopting what is fundamentally an increasingly popular and logical good policy, they would want it to be attached to someone other than the Greens so that it's not a Greens win.
Hang on, your theory is different to Tim Wilson's. Tim Wilson's is saying he gets the ACTU to float this idea so then Labor can reject it and say we're in the sensible centre and they get to do whatever the heck they want, okay? Namely raising taxes, according to Tim Wilson. You're saying they're coordinating this position to then build support for these kind of reforms. So yeah.
Or to
that is the one very rare
kind of
point in which
you
you depart ways with Tim Wilson.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's right. I don't totally agree with Tim's take because we're obviously coming at it from opposite perspective. But I do think I know that someone tweeted this out being this is so bullshit for Tim Wilson to be saying that they would be coordinating in any way or that they're the Labor Party is the political wing of the ACTU. And I'm well, that's actually not that crazy at all. That's
there's obviously a relationship and support. Yeah, we know the ACTU campaigns for the Labor government and we're behind the Change the Rules campaign. Again, that they do occasionally critique Labor governments, but broadly fall into line and have similar interests. That's probably fair to say. Can we just reiterate how crazy it is that Tim Wilson is the shadow industrial relations minister? This is the guy who was encouraging the police to get the hoses out to spray down striking workers, okay? And in an opinion piece described the working from home debate as, what was it, professional workplace apartheid, I believe.
Oh, apartheid. Yeah.
This is bonkers. He's cuckoo crazy nuts, you guys. I don't like it.
The Replacements is mildly enjoyable because of the team's antics, despite the fact that the finer points of American football are extremely elusive. But I never deluded myself that I was seeing anything dynamic or insightful. David?
No, you sure aren't. Well, look, I mean, this probably offended me as much as The Cell offended you, but for obviously very different reasons. It is a film which celebrates strikebreakers and scabs. Let's say that to start with. I mean, this must be Peter Reith's favourite film of the year.
Oh, David, I think you're taking it a trifle seriously.
No, I'm not, because it's a very strong subtext. I mean, here, every time we see the real footballers, I mean, the genuine ones, they're utterly demonised. They're made to look greedy, they're made to look violent, they're made to look stupid. And these lovable scabs, these lovable strikebreakers, they're the ones that we're expected to cheer for. By the way, did they have to bring in a scab team of cheerleaders as well?
Yes, I know. I thought that was extremely funny. Obviously, yes, they had to replace everybody on the field.
Okay, well, I mean, it's supposed to be a funny, sort of entertaining film. I thought it was utterly predictable, utterly unfunny, and boring as could be, and much too long. I hated every second of it. I'm going to give it 0.
Oh, David, I do think you have taken it a little bit seriously, but I know it's a sporting film. I'm giving it 2.5.
Well, that's the show, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Call to action, a couple of things you can do. You can sign Oxfam's Not In My Name petition that is calling on the Australian government to don't keep doing genocide in our name, and to introduce sanctions and to live up to our obligations as human beings and under international law. And you can hit the streets. The National March for Palestine is happening next Sunday, August 24th. This is set to be massive right across the country. We'll put a link to the Green Left, which sort of lays out where a bunch of the rallies are happening. But wherever you are, there's chances are there is a rally near you. I've been slack, I'll be honest, getting out there on the streets on Sundays. I will be there 100% next Sunday, August 24th, and please join us because, yes, maybe some people think that Australia's done all it can now that it recognises Palestine. That's simply not true. More needs to be done right now. They're not letting you go across the Story Bridge, right? Is that what that ruling ended up being?
They're challenging it, so they'll need a court ruling. It's basically in the same situation as the Sydney one was. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And a little plugsy for friend of the show, Mark Humphreys. His doco about housing, we talked about this in our live show in Sydney, is out now on Binge. It's called Sold, Who Broke the Australian Dream. You can get a free trial on Binge just to watch that so you don't support... Oh, Murdoch doesn't own Binge anymore. That's right. Okay, so you can do it conscious-free.
Guilt-free.
Guilt-free. Maybe we should get Mark back on the show to talk about it more. I'm interested to see that. But if you want to have a look at that documentary about the Australia's cooked housing market and what renting is like in this country from a funny, nice man like Mark Humphreys, check out Sold, Who Broke the Australian Dream.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you're having a lovely Sunday. I hope you get at least a 3-day weekend. And if you don't, thinking of you, grateful for your hard work. Hopefully one day we'll get there. Please share our stuff, our socials posts at Serious Danger AU on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Find our merch and our contact and all those things at seriousdangerpod.com. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Serious Danger Australia.